Hi everybody, quick video from me. Wanted to do something just a little bit on Daniel Farke's comments, which I've just watched, and it spurred a little bit of something inside me to come in here and talk about it. Check out the review of the game for earlier on, which we're not going to touch on in this video. But I wanted to talk about Daniel Farke. I wanted to talk about his words after the game. Do I agree with him? Do I disagree with him? I unequivocally agree with him. I think he's absolutely spot on. The game today, we're not going to get into specific stats on the other video, so if you want to check that out, make sure you do so. But what I would say about the game today in particular, it felt like at points we were never going to score. And you've never had that feeling with Leeds United in the last 12 months, really. It always feels like we're going to score. Now, the context is, naturally, Leeds are making that step up. And Farke's comments in that, almost like, the post-game analysis actually gave me a lot of confidence, because it's like, the manager is very, very much aware that just because we're competing with these sides, just because we're not getting smacked by them, let's be realistic. You look at that Man United game, we've not been beaten. Villarreal, we've not been beaten. Paderborn, we've not been beaten Bundesliga 2 level. But there feels like a massive, massive point at which Daniel Farke was trying to get over there. He said Bamford and Joseph are not part of my plans, which effectively is him saying, look, I need someone else in. I need someone else in. I need some reserves in there as well. He's spoken about fullback, getting somebody else in there. And it almost felt like a bit of a plea to the board. And I'm not, for one, I'm not turning around and saying there's any sort of problem between them. I can't stand it when the narrative is built like there's a problem between them and all this sort of stuff. I don't think that'll be the case in pre-season. They'll all be on the same page. But he was asked a pretty direct question: is there stuff to do? There is, and I think Leeds are set up in quite a nice way. I do, but I think when you're kind of looking at the spark of the side, and Largi Ramazani is that spark in the side. Obviously, Nonso has been really good in pre-season, and we like the look of him, of course. But I guess when you're kind of looking at Largi Ramazani as the spark, and has been the spark in pre-season when it comes to an attacking sense, and he wasn't Farke's number one pick, which makes you think, is he going to be Farke's number one pick going into next season? It does raise your eyebrow a little bit. And after the game, he was effectively saying, there's a few issues still, and we're all aware of that. And there needs to be, a bolster in place. You've got Jack Harrison with an injury, James with an injury, Bogle with an injury. And he said as well that he'd ideally like to have everybody in before the international break. And I thought to myself, well, let's just break this down. Leeds United have got... look, no game's ideal. No game, there's not going to be an idyllic period for Leeds United, but there are better periods for Leeds United. I look at Everton immediately, and I think that's a must-win. At least they're not a must not lose, but a must win. And the reason behind me saying that is because you don't want to be going into this season. I'm not writing them off as losses, but you're going up against Arsenal, you're going up against Newcastle. These are, the top 2, 3 arguably teams in the division, really, aren't they? Top 4. So you kind of look at it and you're thinking to yourself, these are going to be, realistically, when you're targeting games, you go into every game to win, of course, but Leeds are going to have to be cautious and pragmatic in these games as well. They're going to have to go out and try beat Everton to notch 3 points on the board, and especially if you're talking about Everton in and around maybe 14th place and below. Some may say I'm even putting them too high, 14th and below. You've got to be targeting your home games. We're targeting home games when it comes to Burnley and Sunderland, obviously, but then you've got to be looking at Wolves, West Ham, Everton. You've got to be doing that, and to give you that assurance, you've got to have your best team on the pitch. And we were speaking very earlier on today on the watch along about Leeds United going out there and signing players of which are going to give us the best chance to beat Everton on the opening day. We were speaking weeks ago about Igor Paixão and Rodrigo Muniz. Starting for Leeds United in that game, and I think that will give Leeds United a significant boost. You look at the attacking line there, and you wouldn't have to start Ramazani. You might not even have to start Nonto. You could start Dan James, couldn't you, and Paixão. But the whole point is, you go out and get a left winger or a number 10, whatever you want to do, just someone to add to that attacking depth, and then you go get a centre forward. And especially after Farke, in his press conference afterwards, has just literally come out and said he's told Joseph and Bamford they're not in his plans. The fullback is a real issue, because we saw the fright of Gabby Goodmanson today. Eli Mele even been given minutes to put him in the you know, in the shop window when Ilhan Mele has been in the shop window for 6 years at Leeds United now. He doesn't need to be put on. And there was nearly some collateral damage with him nearly injuring Gabby Goodmanson, which, you know, he should never play for Leeds again just on that front anyway. Not that he should in general anyway, but, you know, it's just one of those where I do agree with Farke. I think he's spot on. I think we're all in agreement that players need to be added to this side for us to be able to really compete. He effectively said, if you paraphrase him, we're not good enough at this moment in time. And that's the thing, you can't let pre-season dictate your eyesight really when you're looking at how good the Premier League is going to be again this season, and how it does feel like we've got parts of which are going to be able to attack it in a really good way, but it also feels like when I'm watching it today against really good calibre, really good opposition, and similarly against Man United, really, when you were looking at it, we had good phases, we had opportunities where we could have scored, but it just wasn't ruthless and clinical enough. And I think that's what Farke was almost smiling at in his post-match press conference, effectively saying, look, there needs to be more bodies in the attacking third in terms of, like, you know, quality coming in, whether it be a 9 and a left winger or a right winger. And obviously we know that the Niners have been, you know, talking and preparing from really April onwards, if you're to believe the Athletic article, and they've been, you know, preparing for this period and this point of which they'll have known there's going to be serious competition for these players. We've seen recently, obviously, Pajau, us and Marseille, you know, Rodrigo Muniz, Newcastle, us, other teams, Spurs looking at him, but they'll have known this, you know, they'll have known big teams are going to come in for him, and if they're not moving on the signings quickly, there's just going to be more and more and more teams coming in. And obviously then it comes down to agents and what the player wants, as we saw with Pajau. So it is quite complicated, and we mentioned this very, very early on in the window, that it's not just about the what Leeds want now. It is always going to be about the player. They can try convince, they can try say, look, this is what we can provide, this is what we can do. But at the end of the day, a player might turn around and just went, well, there's no way I'm coming because you've just been promoted, you know? When I can go to a mid-table side, I can stay at my original side who aren't in relegation trouble. But these are all permutations. These are all separate conversations. What Daniel Farke is saying today is absolutely spot on. I didn't cover it in my match reaction because I couldn't, because I've just done the match reaction. But Leeds do need players through the door, and I'm hoping that the Niners are working in silence, as we always sort of coin as Leeds fans, and I hope they are, and I hope we're going to get a couple through the door this week, because that Everton game's a must-win for me. You don't want to be going into the season, and let's say hypothetically, and the whole likelihood is we do struggle against Newcastle and Arsenal. That's the reality of it because of how good these teams are. With that happening, you're kind of looking at Everton and you're banking on some of these home games and thinking, we've got to get 3 points here, because it's not just about beating Burnley twice and Sunderland twice and accruing 12 points. It's about trying to get near to 40 points if you can, and you've got to beat an Everton at home, or at least not lose. And you've got to be. Everton are going through some struggles at the minute, of course, but, you know, they look like they're still in with the conversation of bringing in Malik Fofana. Tieno Barry's come in. So, you know, and they're an established Premier League side, and we've got to really bring our level up, and I think it's all well and good being strong at the back, and I think Leeds have looked good at the back. I think structurally in that midfield and in the defence, Leeds look good. There is a bit of an issue though going forward. I feel through pre-season I've looked at, there's a bit of sharpness. I think Nonto's looked really sharp in pre-season. I think Ramazani, I don't think Farke's too set on Ramazani. You know, he was mentioning Solomon in his post-match, and it kind of takes you all the way back to Manor Solomon and the limited amount of minutes that largely got under Farke when Solomon was available. So, and obviously then moving for Pajau as well was obviously it was going to put Ramazani quite rightly down the pecking order there as well. But in pre-season, I think in terms of sharpness and pace on that counter-attack, I think Ramazani is the man. And you've got to kind of utilise that in the Premier League. And of course, we're without James today. You know, that was a big thing, of course. And of course, you're without Bogle as well. And Leeds would have looked a lot tighter. But I think what Farke has said is bang on the money. I think full-back reinforcements needed. You can see that today. You can't, for me, you can't be relying on substituting Byram on in the Premier League. And Schmidt, Obviously he's not played, he's miles off it, and you know there's Werder Bremen's calling as well, him going out there, Joseph and Bamford, you know, not been part of his plans, and him saying it again today, throwing Joseph in there as well. And then on top of that, you've got him saying, you know, we need to add to that attack now. We need to add to that attack, and he's not wrong. And you kind of, me and Brownie looked at the blueprint really of the attack and even the defence. And I think, as I keep saying, structurally, I think Leeds look pretty good. The banks look pretty good. The centre backs, I think, look really good. I thought Strout looked good today as well. Biol looked excellent, as did Rodon. I thought Ampadu's growing into the season. But Farke's not wrong. You know, the midfield looks good as well. I think I don't know. I still maybe would like another in there if I'm being really picky. Just maybe a different 8 who can help Tanaka in creating that vertical build-up, of which you kind of only seen from Tanaka, from dropping deep and beating the lines, breaking the lines. Stack's just a little bit of a different player, a bit more of a ball carrier, but overall I think we all know what needs to be done here, and Farke's just made that abundantly clear. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Has that nerved some of you out? Do you think, look, it's fine, it's absolutely fine? And trust me guys, as you can tell by my demeanour, there's no sort of panic here with me, but I do think it's pretty obvious that Farke needs signings, because we are about to go into the best league in the world. And to go into the best league in the world, you need to have a competitive side. We need needle movers in. So let's wait and see. What do you guys think is going to happen in the next week? Do you think there's going to be things coming? Let us know. We'll see you in a bit.